Going on, y'all? Y'all already seen the title. We balling like it's March Madness. You feel me? This is my NCAA tournament bracket overview, tournament overview, however you want to put it. You know what I'm saying? We are about to talk about March Madness. We already know when March comes around, this is the biggest event of March. Any sporting event, it topples any sporting event because we know how crazy March Madness can get. This is a tournament of 64 teams battling it out, single elimination, win in advance. You got to win 6 games to become a national champion. Some teams have it easier than others. Some teams think they have it easier than others, get upset, and you got multiple Cinderella teams. But let's talk about the overview for this upcoming March Madness tournament. This is being recorded on Monday. The first four play on Tuesday, and the actual tournament, the first round of the tournament starts on Thursday. Man, this is a very interesting one. On this video, I'm going to be giving my overview of both the men's and the women's bracket. We are going to start off with the men's. When you look at the first seed, the number one for the men's tournament. Now, Duke, they are the number one overall seed. Arizona, Michigan, and the defending champion Florida Gators. For the Florida Gators to be this number one seed after starting off the season 5-4 is absolutely phenomenal because, yeah, they look like they were cooked and they look like they were in trouble. They lost a lot of guards to the NBA, which we already know in college basketball, a lot of things are heavily reliant on guard play. So it obviously was understandable as to why they had to find their footing. But once they did find their footing, boy, they found it and they kept it. And it has brought them to a number one seed in this tournament. Now, they did not win the SEC. Arkansas won the SEC after Florida lost to Vanderbilt in the semifinal. But this still is a really good team. I do not have them as my favorite to go out there and win and repeat. I do feel like they can get, very far. But still, shout out to Florida nonetheless for even, making it this far. Now, Arizona. We talked about the Big 12 and how it's been the best conference in college basketball all season. And it has, you know what I'm saying? For the most part, the Big 12 has been heavily represented in the top 25 and within the top 5 to 10 almost every single week. Now it's the time for them to go out there and play people. Obviously, you're not playing people in your conference, so it's time for them to go out there and ball out. You know what I'm saying? If you guys have been playing in a tough conference such as the Big 12 all year, you should be prepared when you go against these teams in the SEC or in the Big 10. You know what I'm saying? Or in the ACC. Because even though the SEC once again will have the most teams represented per conference by conference, we know the Big 12 has some really, really great teams that's going to be in the tournament. And who's to say that they'll even get to play any of them just because of how the field has set itself up. Now for Duke, I will say for them to be the number one overall seed, they definitely got the worst part of the bracket in my opinion. You have teams like UConn in their on their side of the bracket. You got St. John's who literally just blew out UConn, and UConn is a 2 seed and St. John's is a 5 seed. So that just shows right there, St. John's just beat UConn twice this season, but there are 3 seeds behind them. Like, that's crazy, and that's scary for a Duke team, in my opinion. Obviously, Duke, they're still going to be the favorite because they are the number one seed in the overall tournament for a reason when it comes to that region that they're playing in. But, man, you just got to think, how am I the number one overall seed and I got to play teams, potentially, I have to play teams like UConn, Louisville, Kansas, St. John's, or UConn? Like, that's crazy. You know what I'm saying? But like I said, Duke, They are a really good team themselves. Obviously, they've had some close calls, so they have scared me at times because it has been times where I feel like they haven't showed up until one of the last minutes or at least the second half of the game. But nonetheless, if they continue to lock it in, dial it in, they could find themselves winning their first national championship in a long time. Then you got teams like Michigan, who's a 1 seed. They just lost to Purdue in the Big Ten. And shout out to Purdue because they won the Big Ten from a 7 seed. Obviously, they started off hot in the beginning of the season, but they kind of fizzled out. But they find themselves as a 2 seed, and they just won the Big Ten. You know what I'm saying? So they're going to come in with a lot of confidence. Iowa State is a 2 seed. They just lost off that crushing buzzer beater against Arizona. I feel like Iowa State is a really good team that can go far. I really don't think it's going to be a lot of Cinderella stories this NCAA tournament, to be honest with you. Now, obviously, we know it's going to be upsets because that is the nature of the tournament. It wouldn't be March Madness if it wasn't any upsets, but I don't think it's going to be many Cinderella runs of teams just going extremely far that absolutely would have had no shot if you asked us that in the beginning of the season. I do think there are some teams that are maybe in that 8 or 9 range that could find themselves like having a really strong tournament. Like Georgia, in my opinion, they have St. Louis. Now, they are a team that can, in my opinion, the Georgia Bulldogs are a team that can go out there and lose in the first round of the tournament, or they can make it to as far as a Sweet 16, in my opinion. You know what I'm saying? Like, that may sound crazy, but I feel like Georgia is on that landscape of they can be really elite, but they also have times where they fall down. And that's what happened this season. They started off really strong, was ranked inside the top 25, fell off a little bit, but was still able to get some really good quality wins to get into the NCAA tournament. St. Louis, obviously, they find themselves in the tournament after having a really good season, and it was a little bit of controversy on if they could have, fell out just because they didn't win their conference, but they get in. And I feel like Georgia versus St. Louis is going to be the best 8-9 matchup in the first round of the tournament, if I do say so myself. But, that's the men's side of things. Obviously, if you ask me today, Duke has been my favorite, but if Duke doesn't win, I would definitely have to go with Arizona. I feel like Arizona is really complete. They have size, they got good shooting, good guard play, and I feel like if you had asked me today whose chances are the best to win, I would say Arizona for the men's side of things. Now shifting over to the women's. The 4-1 seed for the women are UConn, who is the number 1 overall seed and the defending champions, UCLA, Texas, and South Carolina. Now, first things first. Although the UConn Huskies are the number 1 overall seed, they're the defending champions, they are not my favorite going into this tournament. My favorite is the Texas Longhorns. And I'm finna tell you why. The Texas Longhorns have the most ranked AP wins this season. They've beaten with like 13 or 14 AP teams. They've been one of the only teams in the last 2 seasons that has actually had South Carolina's number. Obviously, Oklahoma beat South Carolina this past season, but I definitely feel like if Oklahoma and South Carolina played each other again, South Carolina would win comfortably. I'm not going to say they'll blow them out, but I feel like they would win by at least, 7 to 10 points over Oklahoma. Obviously, we know they've been owning LSU. And the only really good team that has been consistent, Oklahoma, they just got good this year. But you know what I mean with LSU. And when it comes to LSU and Texas, LSU cannot beat South Carolina, and Texas can. They've shown that they can, and they've done it. They've done it in the past 2 seasons. And the Texas Longhorns, that's one of the first reasons why they are my favorites. Another reason why they are my favorites is because they don't even have to leave home state. They're in Fort Worth. Their region is in Fort Worth. So they're pretty much going to have home court advantage, you might as well say, in every game that they play. Now, obviously, that doesn't mean anything because it's tournament. Anything can happen. It's one and done. Technically, it's a neutral site. But for the Longhorns to have the season that they've had, when you look at UConn, they're number one, but they really haven't faced anyone tough because there's really no other tough teams in the Big East for them to play. You look at UCLA, they did this same thing last year. They had a really good record, but when they faced UConn, I believe, they lost. I mean, UCLA has had trouble with physicality. So, and I feel like, obviously, playing in the SEC, I feel like if you play in the SEC, regardless of the sport, men's or women's, it's going to have, you already are going to be used to some physicality, especially with going against Dawn Staley, in which we know that she always has a really big lineup. And most of the time, if there are players that have a good bit of size on them, you can expect them to play very physical. And then when you look at South Carolina, the other one seed, Texas has beat them most recently, and they beat them, pretty handily. So that's why I would say the Texas Longhorns are my pick going into this tournament. When you look at UConn, I do believe that, with Geno and his ability to always get his team locked in, them not really playing people is not going to harm them too much, because at the end of the day, it is still Geno and it is still, UConn, and they have a really, really great team. But I feel like that's something that people have to still watch out for if that did be the case to cause them to slip, eventually. Obviously, you got other really good teams like Duke, LSU, and that's another thing. Duke, LSU, and it's another really, really good team that can give, UCLA problems, because UCLA, they pretty much have the toughest path and when it comes to one seeds. So that's another reason why I'm not really too strong on UCLA. But I mean, this is their second season back-to-back being on this stage. They know what disappointment tastes like, and they probably don't want to taste that again. So I don't know. I feel like these are really going to be good tournaments. A team that I will watch out for, like how I said with Georgia, Olivia Miles is better. I will watch out for TCU. I feel like TCU is a really good team, and not a lot of people are talking about them. Olivia Miles has really been tearing it up. Olivia Miles was able to get out of Hannah's shadow and lead her own team. And now TCU, like I said, in my opinion, they're a really good team. Obviously, with Iowa State, they're going to have eyes on them because of Artie Crooks. But I feel like my favorites would be the Texas Longhorns. And, if I had to look out for a team that could either get eliminated first round or eliminated before the Sweet 16 or make a really deep run to maybe the Elite 8, it would be TCU. But I can't wait. You're not really, and due to history, you're not really going to see surprises and upsets in that first round for the women's, because I seen a stat last night on Sports Center, and it was like the top 4 seeds are 371-1 in the first round, like all top 4 seeds, and the only team that lost was like Stanford in 1998. So, and I don't see that happening with this tournament coming up. Typically, when it comes to the women's tournament, the best teams are pretty much guaranteed to make it far. But for the men, not so much. They be slipping. But y'all let me know what y'all think about this tournament. I do feel like this is going to be the best March Madness tournament that we have seen in quite some time for both the men and the women. I feel like the men and the women's tournaments are going to be equally as good. And yeah, I feel like this is going to be the best in some time, and maybe, down the line, considering on how it goes, depending on how it goes, this may be deemed as the best March Madness tournaments of all time. Or maybe that's a stretch. Y'all let me know. But as always, y'all already know what I'm going to say. Y'all have a blessed one, and I'll see y'all in the next one.